Well, for nearly all of us, sleeping in the dark and then waking up in the dark has actually become a bit of a norm. It's quite a nice surprise, actually. I was driving home yesterday. I saw the traffic lights were working. I forgot how they worked. We continuously see the disheartening effects of the power cuts on all of us, from schools to hospitals to homes, businesses, traffic lights not working on a daily basis. Heidi Giokos was watching those traffic lights for us yesterday, but the frustration, Heidi, as she joins me here on the show, is growing and growing, because yesterday you were talking and when you were out and about with the traffic situation. And I think this is where a lot of people get most frustrated, is when you get to the traffic lights that aren't working. You were talking about those points people as well, weren't you? But it's an overall sense of blackouts just affecting every part of our lives.
Yes, I mean, Gareth, it normally takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to get to work. And with the constant rolling blackouts, it's almost 40 minutes every morning. And that's the reality of most South Africans, that they are subjected to constant rolling blackouts. And they are frustrated when they get to work. They're frustrated when they get home. Because it's just constant rolling blackouts. And the pointsmen have not necessarily been appointed, especially when it comes to JMPD officials, because they don't have enough resources. They also don't have budgets. And they are in the process of removing unauthorized people from major intersections, people that have actually come in and tried to assist. As much as they aren't authorized to do so, they are making some kind of a difference. But JMPD says they're unauthorized. It could pose a bigger risk if there is an accident, or if any motorist feels that they want to use the traffic lights as a four-way stop, as they should be using. But I think South Africans are getting increasingly frustrated. There was supposed to be an Eskom briefing yesterday, and that was cancelled at the very last minute. And the reason for this is because the president is still engaging with all stakeholders. But the big question is, what are you engaging on? We all know what the problem is. We are sitting in an energy crisis. We need emergency electricity. What is the president, together with the Eskom board and other stakeholders, going to do about this? We cannot just be told, well, this is what our life is going to look like. And we had stage 6 indefinitely for the past couple of days, and now things might look a little bit better because it's stage 5 and 4, which it's actually not better.
It's not really. And am I the only one, without trying to be overly critical about it, that finds the timing curious, that as the president is meeting with Eskom, instead of having this media briefing, we're suddenly able to come down to stage 4 and stage 5. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. It was great to have some power last night, but a lot of critics are coming out and saying that there could be a lot more politically motivated drivers here than just the power issue. Why is it when suddenly the president is available to meet Andre de Ruyter, we can come down a stage or 2?
Exactly. Why must there be that kind of pressure or intervention from the president? Surely it should be a priority that South Africans should have access to electricity. And you know, you said something, Gareth, where you said, I don't want to be overcritical. There's nothing like being overcritical when it comes to this energy crisis. It's literally brought our country to a standstill. And the president, together with other officials, need to understand the severity of this particular matter. And you have residents saying that this is unacceptable. Residents have even gone as far as saying this should be declared a state of disaster. This should be declared a state of emergency, where perhaps the army should be brought in to facilitate, especially at substations where there's constant cable theft and vandalism, because that's when criminals pounce. When there is load shedding, they look at the load shedding schedule and say, this substation looks lovely, we can get some copper and cables from there, and the army should maybe be deployed in those areas.
And one of the areas that I think many people, even if you don't live in Johannesburg, I think North Riding has become almost the poster child for failing infrastructure. I mean, and there is no sarcasm here. I mean, I know people who live in North Riding. You'll come out of, say, stage 4, stage 5 load shedding, and it'll be 3 to 4 days, sometimes longer, before North Riding comes right.
Yes, and that seems to be a very big issue that City Power has tried to address, but their hands are also tied. So what happens is, say now there's stage 6 load shedding, you don't have power from 4 in the morning until 8 in the morning. The power only comes back on at about 10, 10:30, and then there's load shedding again from 12. So you basically only have electricity for about 2 to 3 hours a day, if you're lucky, because normally when the power goes off, the substations are vandalized, or there's copper theft, and then there's no electricity for 3 to 4 days. We got a chance to speak to some of those residents expressing their frustrations. Let's listen in on that.
Frustration is obviously the 6:30 load shedding. We know school opened recently last week, Wednesday. The first day of school, we were already hit with load shedding. It's a nightmare. Parents and kids are under pressure trying to get ready and trying to get themselves ready to attend school or go to work places.
I think North Riding has been one of the hardest hit areas with load shedding. So not only have we been hit with 12 to 14 hours a day, but when load shedding ends, we basically don't have power coming back on. Our substations trip. They can't handle the load shedding, and we've asked numerous times, if you know the area cannot handle load shedding and it's going to trip, then can you not remove the area? But we just get shut down, we get ignored, nothing happens about it. And the thing is that, like, I, for one, have a special needs son. And when there's medication that's needed, if things need to happen and our batteries are running out, there's nothing we can do. Then you've got to scramble around trying to get decent care.
If I don't work, I don't get paid. So most of the time I don't have internet. By the time I do have internet, which is maybe 4 hours through the night, I don't work through the night. And it's not only that, it affects everything. It affects you buying supplies because you can't store your meat and whatever, you put in your freezer. Everything's going to ruin. The amount of waste is diabolical. What happens when there's no electricity to pump the water that we need? What's going to happen then into the reservoirs? What's going to happen?
And here's the problem. It's North Riding, as I said, is sadly the poster child of what is going on here. But then we've also been hearing from City Power about their batteries. I spoke to Isaac Mangena yesterday, and apart from the cable theft, I mean, everyone knows that's true. You've been to those substations, you've seen the damage, Heidi. But now these batteries, these backup batteries, meant to last 8 hours. But to your point, when you've only got an hour and a half, 3 hours, if you're lucky, to recharge those batteries, that's why the substations don't come back on, because City Power's own batteries can't charge.
Yes, exactly. If you just think about individuals' own inverters, it takes about 4 hours to fully charge. But if your electricity doesn't come back on when it's scheduled to come back on, then there's no time for it to charge. And City Power is at pains to try and explain this to residents, to say, we are trying our very best, but we ourselves are struggling, because when the electricity is supposed to come back on, it does not come back on. And you actually need to have physical manpower to go back, switch on the various substations and switch it off. And they themselves are battling because of this erratic load shedding schedule. I think what's also important to highlight here, Gareth, is that some of the residents that we spoke to told us that they are also frustrated because for most of the day they don't have electricity, but come end of the month their electricity bill is sometimes higher.
Yes.
And they don't have electricity, so
go.
why are they being billed for electricity that they haven't even used or didn't even have in the first place? And this is something we'll definitely have to explore, because why are people being charged when they have electricity for 2 hours a day?
I remember doing an interview on that in the early days of Stage 6, and I asked that question. I think it was actually to City Power, one of the administrators, asking, why is it that if I'm not getting the power, the electricity, why am I still being billed the same, or at least, if not higher, at least the same, when the fact I haven't had electricity for 12 hours a day? And the answer I was given, and maybe you can follow up on this for me, Heidi, is the fact that it is the ability, what we're paying for as residents, is the ability for power to be provided. Not just the use of the electricity.
But it's not being provided.
But it's not being provided. And it didn't matter which way I tried to pull that interview apart, I was not getting an answer. And I think people on Twitter were infuriated for me trying to get the answer. So maybe Heidi, you can jump onto that one, because that's a good question. Yeah. Why is the power bill still the same when we don't have the power? Heidi Giokos all over the energy crisis for us. We'll be checking in again with her a little bit later.